Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. Starting a couple of minutes early here because I wanted to let you guys know that a friend of mine, I'm going to call him Rip on here, SREPKIE is his handle. He is our local LEO, our rural local LEO, and he's agreed to participate and maybe answer any questions that you guys might have prepping related to a local LEO and a local LEO's point of view. So if you really want to know what community is like, he is a good person to ask questions for because, of course, he is part of our community and he is our local LEO. Let's see here. Hello, Gina. Hello, Candace. 1776. Luke Gallo, Dirt Farmer, Monkey Food Garden. How you doing, Captain Bart? Lady Luger, ANT, Danger Green, from Windy Chili, Texas. Oh, it's pretty chilly here too. I don't know if it's Texas chili though. Texas chili. I made a joke. Hey Tom, how you doing? Just made Amish popcorn. That sounds good. My wife loves popcorn. I got popcorn in every color here. I got yellow, I got white, I got red, I got blue. Any trappers out there tonight? I don't know. I work with a guy that is a big time trapper, and he actually traps for pests too. And conibears are kind of the main one that he uses. And I used to trap back in the day, but it's been a long, long time. Hey, Blue Ridge Mountains. That's probably beautiful. Yeah, we're flatlanders here, especially in this part of Michigan. Hey there, Mr. Bumblehill. Prepared for Happy Girl. How's everybody doing today? We have gotten a cold snap here and we have gotten snow, and the roads were kind of crappy here in the last couple of days. I had a really good live stream earlier this week where I discussed and showed, some different antique items that I basically still use for my own preparedness. And that was a very good live stream. And I think maybe I will continue that every week or two. I might pull out a few of the antique things that I have here and I'll show you guys what they are and kind of how I use those for prepping. Have I ever dry canned any popcorn seed? No, uh, it would probably blow up on me if I did. But I do store it in mason jars to keep any pests or anything like that is out. Been freezing down there in Louisiana, high in the 50s, lows in the 30s. Yeah, that's pretty cold for Louisiana. Hey, Teutonic, how you doing? Anyway, Rip, a friend of mine here, he basically met me because of my channel, and we've become good friends. And it's nice having someone with that law enforcement. It's good to have someone with that law enforcement job that and you have a good relationship with, because I go down to what we affectionately call the cop shop from time to time, and I'll just go in there and have a coffee with him and just discuss world events, how things are going, how things are changing, and all the different possible threats that relay back to preppers and preparedness. And I have to think that I have learned a lot from him, and hopefully he's learned a lot from me as well. And that is something that's very, very important, but it's very small town are very tight knit, and if you have good friends in a small town, you pretty much already have a prepping group. You already have a prepping community started because they're your neighbors. A lot of people want to form some type of group with outsiders or strangers or whatnot, and I find that and I've had people tell me, people that are in the preparedness game, I've had people tell me that when shit hits the fan, your group is your neighbors basically. And it, whether you like them or not, that's a lot of the people you're going to have around are your neighbors. And to have those kind of folks in in your group, in your circle, is kind of highly beneficial for a lot of different reasons. Hello, Mother Refugee, in here keeping an eye on me here. Yep, coffee's always on, Rip. Yeah, on, and I think that everybody should have a decent relationship with their LEOs. They should at least know you and they should at least know your name, because if there are any small incidences or things that you notice that aren't really kosher, you can bring that stuff up. You can have a decent working relationship at bare minimum with LEOs. Oh my goodness, Sunset. Was actually, YouTube actually did me a favor, threw me one for once. Yeah, YouTube's been terrible for me lately. I've got videos in my queue that I would love to put out. I've got a video showing how to clean and maintain magazines for pew pews, and I would love to do some other videos on other a little bit more firearm related topics and stuff, because I have so much experience in that. Yet, the minute I put something like that out, YouTube just boom, and it's done. And there's a couple of channels that I actually follow. They fall into those same categories. Like Mr. Guns and Gears got a massive gun channel. He's just shy of 1 million subscribers, and I have actually learned a lot from his older videos as far as working on firearms and tuning stuff and that kind of stuff. And he was putting out a video on the new Gen 6 Glocks that are coming out, and his video got basically postponed for 24 hours because the algorithm, banned him, or, put him in the outbox or whatever the heck they call that now. And then there's another guy, Lemon Grenade is his name. He's actually kind of in the same thing. He kind of talks about AKs, and he's really critical with certain AK manufacturers, but he gets into the nuts and bolts of the manufacturing of these things, which I find highly interesting. And that gets into gunsmithing, which again, if there was some long-term SHTF situation, every town and every local area when I was a kid growing up had a gunsmith, and you just don't have that now anymore. And a gunsmith was just like an auto mechanic, was like a plumber, was like a lumberman. These were people that worked in the dairy industry, people that run the mill. These were all things that made communities work back 100 years ago. You had to have these people. So, now I turn to YouTube for a lot of this information because I want to absorb as much of this information as I can. And then, of course, YouTube does its best to, you know, beat those things down, which really, really, I think is a detrimental to the prepping community as a whole. Hey there, Jody. How you doing? Sunset Heritage. I'm glad you got the notification too. That's awesome. Christian Love, hey, from Connecticut. How's things out in Connecticut? Making venison chili. I love venison chili, and a lot of other people don't, so I have a hard time making big batches of that because I can't make a small batch of chili. That's just sacrilege. It has to be a big batch to feed at least 4 or 6 people. That's how I make chili. It doesn't matter whether it's venison or beef or white chicken chili, whatever. When I get in the mood for chili, it's got to be a big old pot. Mary Gallagher, how you doing? Teresa Walden, do you or anyone know how to make tinctures like they did before they had stores to buy liquor? It's hard to find people like-minded around me, always watching videos, willing to learn. Well, where we're at here, moonshining was a thing during Prohibition. People distilled their own liquor, and my guess is that's probably, if they didn't barter for what they needed to make the tinctures, they probably made it themselves or knew somebody that did make it. I typically will use a middle of the road vodka when I've made tinctures. I will use something like Stolanaya. I know people that use Everclear and stuff, but Everclear is sometimes a little bit harder to find because it's a really higher proof. But I find that for the few things that I've made tinctures for, the stuff like Stolanaya Absolute is perfectly fine for it. And I've had pretty good luck with it. And one in particular is I used it in with the inner part of birch bark, and that inner part of birch bark, and then I've actually mixed that into a salve. And that inner part of birch bark is what people use for arthritis and joint pain and stuff. And I've actually made some of that, and it does help for me anyway. It has worked. It has worked pretty decent, and it makes a very dark, like almost like a burnt orange tincture is what it makes. But that is one of the things that I use like just a regular Stolenaya or Absolute for. Let's see. Dreschel 2000 actually got a notification. That's awesome. Luke, awesome, got a notification too. Local New York farmers did not cut their corn this year. Why? Well, sometimes when farmers don't harvest their stuff, like for around here it's sugar beets, if they don't harvest their sugar beets, sometimes there's like a subsidy where they don't want them, where they already have too many sugar beets to process, and they will actually pay them to have them plowed under. Let's see what we got here. Mary Gallagher, good to see you. Mary's one of my good friends from another group that I'm on. I have known Mary on the internet for a really, really long time already now. Oh yeah, now is the time to buy extra parts for your firearms, and that's another thing. I would like to show you guys, the ins and outs of why I think an 870 is better than a Mossberg 500, because I sold hundreds of Mossberg 500s in my days, and I've seen a lot more problems with Mossbergs than I did at Remington's back at the time. But then Remington went through bankruptcy. They're not the same company anymore. Those companies all got dismantled and rebuilt. The only thing the same is the names. And there's things now where Mossbergs are better than Remingtons. There's just all these things that I could elaborate on and show you guys different things about these different firearms brands, and I just can't do it. Yeah, I wouldn't be allowed to do it on here. They would absolutely crush me. Luke Mathis, I use Crown Roos for everything for tinctures to lures. That one I've never heard of. The corn was for their own cows. I'm not sure, unless there was something in the corn that there was some kind of fungus or something in the corn that it wasn't any good for them. And we still have one farmer around here that will harvest, sometimes will harvest corn on the cob. That's how my grandparents harvested corn. They left it on the cob and it went in the corn crib, and it was for their cows, for their livestock. At a live stream about October end, before I went in ICU for 10 days, somebody called Taz SP was looking for pearl barley. I saw a package of 16 ounces for $3 at Kroger, but not bulk though. There you go, Tom. That's some advice there if you're looking for barley. You can get barley for anybody that's in kind of the central part of Michigan here, in the Lower Peninsula. The Amish stores and the Mennonite stores, particularly that bulk country foods, they do have barley over there. They do have pearl barley, and I actually have barley here because we like barley soup. Beef barley soup is something that we make from time to time, and if you can put some good mushrooms in there, it's even better. Mr. Bumblehill, anybody checked out ethical preparedness books on natural remedies? That one I don't have. I got a couple of older books here that my mom had for natural remedies, but that one I've never heard of. Thanks. That's what I use is vodka. Yeah, I got willow in my yard. I am wanting to go back to the 1800s and know how to do stuff. The inner bark of the willow, a lot of plants, and I think I did a video on this a while back, a lot of plants, the medicinal properties are in the inner bark of that plant. And willow is basically aspirin. So it's a blood thinner and it's an astringent, it's a pain reliever, whatever. And the Anishinaabe and the Ojibwe and the other sort, the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, the Chippewa, they were all the kind of the Anishinaabe of this area of the Great Lakes, and they would actually chew on the willow. They would take a piece of that and they would chew on that for the medicinal purposes of the willow bark. And that gets into what a spit poultice is. I don't know if anybody knows or if you've ever heard of a spit poultice. And what a spit poultice is, if you're out, whatever, and you injure yourself, you've got like you get like a sliver, or you get like a dirty cut or something like that. The natives, they would take the broadleaf plantain. Plantain is what we call around here, but I believe they actually call it plantain. And you can look up plantain or plantain on. It's a very common, what's considered a weed around here. You can look that up. They would take those leaves, they would actually chew them up, and they would take that chewed up leaf, and they would press that into that wound, and that would release kind of the antiseptic properties of that, and that would actually draw the infection or slivers or anything out of that wound. And that's probably the most common plant that was used as a spit poultice around here. What do I got here? Mother Refugees keeping me up to date on everything. Sunset, what is an ideal gift for me? I guess I don't really get into the gifts much anymore. When I was younger, I would always ask for practical stuff that I needed. But to me, like for the holidays and for gifts, I just enjoy sitting around and visiting with my friends and family. That gives me more pleasure, because you know what? There might be a little nugget of wisdom in there that's going to pay benefits down the road. Those are the kind of things that I like, and I like anything that brings me more knowledge. And nowadays with the internet, if you know what you're looking for, knowledge is pretty reasonable if you got the time to go through and look through some of this stuff. Yeah, I'll have to check out Ethical Preparedness's books. Like I said, I've never heard of that one. Hey there, Scout. How you doing? Hey, Dreams. You can also boil the innards of willow and use it for tanning hides. Yeah, and I've had different people ask me to do videos on brain tanning too, but I've never done that, so I don't really know how to. I don't like doing videos on stuff that I don't have any actual experience with. Hey, prepper for the ages. Do I have any experience with traditional snowshoes? Let me see here. See that right there? That is ash and sinew snowshoes back there. And if we get a little bit more snow, I will pull them out and I will do a video on them. I have had those snowshoes for years, but we don't usually get enough snow around here where I actually need them. I find that if there is a foot of snow or less, you really don't need snowshoes. So you really should have about 18 inches of snow at least before you can utilize them. And they're thinner ones, so you can actually wear them while you're riding a snowmobile, and that's why I purchased them. But the thing with traditional snowshoes is once you're done using them, you have to let them dry out. And that's why traditional snowshoes anymore are kind of hard to come by. They're kind of antiquated because it's easier to use the synthetic leather and the synthetic fibers and the aluminum frames and stuff. That makes those snowshoes, that makes them a lot easier to basically maintain and care for. Oh yeah, Sunset. The Native Americans were so wise. Yeah, why do you think they got genocided? They. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But Native Americans were very in tune with the land. They lived so close to the land, and their whole philosophy of land ownership and how you treated nature, the world you lived in, that all was that went against the powers that be when this continent got colonized. And that's basically that in a nutshell. Hey there, Dangerous Freedom. Teresa Walden. I've done brain tanning. I had a deer, but used pig brains. It didn't, but I had to use pig brain because I didn't get the deer head. Yeah, like I said, I got one guy that I used to work with. He said he's done it a couple of different times. If he ever would do it, I'd have to go over to his place and watch him do it. So then I would have a little on hand experience for that. Dog bite is not getting a clear signal tonight. Everything seems to be working here on my end, but everybody's internet. Plus, they had that's another thing I should mention real quick. There was a really powerful solar flare today, or a CME, and of course, that disrupts anything electrical. So, there could be issues with that coming up this week. So, you guys kind of keep that in the back of your mind. If there's any electrical disruptions, it might be related to that. Tomorrow morning, I'll have to catch Suspicious Observers. He's the channel that I kind of keep. If there's anything CME or space weather related, he's kind of my go-to to check out. I think I've been subscribed to him for, gosh, probably 6 years, something like that. Long time anyway. Willow limbs and water will help cutting roots as well. It's good to know. I'm trying to learn curing and smoking meats and how to store it for a long time without refrigeration. Smokehouse, smokehouse, smokehouse. That's what you got to have. In fact, I just started today. I started the production of a smoking turkey video because we always used to smoke turkeys in December when I was younger, because we had an actual smokehouse. We would do, you know, 15 to 20 turkeys at a time. We would do turkey breasts, we would do whole turkeys. And there's a couple different reasons we did it. We did it for the holidays, of course. Everybody likes to smoke turkey during the holidays, but then this time of year, the turkey breasts and the turkeys were always very reasonable because everything was on sale, and it's cold enough outside where you can brine that, because a turkey really should brine for 4 to 5 days, and these are going to be no exception. So I kind of timed it out. It'll brine then this week, and then on my next day off, I'll be able to smoke that and then put that video together. But turkey is done with a cold smoke, so it's smoked to get the flavor and stuff into that, but then you have to cook it afterward. And the old time smoking, like ham and bacon and stuff, they would cold smoke that and they would leave that in the smokehouse. And this time of year, you didn't need refrigeration because that block would keep it cool. And if you smoked it properly, you didn't have to worry about flies or bugs or bacteria, anything on the meat. That did the preserving. And then, of course, if you wanted bacon for breakfast, you went out, you cut a slice of bacon off of the slab that you had hanging out there, you brought it in and you fried it in the cast iron. And that was a lot of stuff like sausage and bacon and ham and stuff. That was the stuff that kept. And then there were certain sausages, like summer sausage is the one. Summer sausage isn't just a name. It was called summer sausage because it would keep without refrigeration in warmer temperatures. So they would mix the cure with it. They would mix the seasoning. They would let that set for several days. They would hard smoke that, and that would dry that out, and it would preserve and it would cure that. It would be in a muslin bag. Muslin is, think of muslin and like what gauze is nowadays. It was solid enough to keep the meat in that tube shape, but yet it was still porous enough to let the smoke and stuff into that. And then that is what would keep. That's what you would do to keep your summer sausage then in summertime. So then when you were out, working in the field or whatever, you take a hunk of that and half a loaf of bread, and you take your water jug or whatever else that you had, man, you'd head out to the field to work, and then you had that with you when you wanted some. You whipped out your pocket knife and you cut a hunk of that off, and you'd have that with you'd have that for your lunch. Smoked cheese was kind of like that too. They would hard smoke cheese to get that rind on that, and that was a semi-preserving technique as well. Oh, what do we got here? Suspicious observers. Mother refugee just sent me a text there. Suspicious observers. You put in suspicious observers, but it's not a zero or an O for observers. It's actually the zero for the numbers. That's how his channel comes up, and he does like a 2 to 3 minute report every day on basically space weather. He talks about solar flares, then he gets into the kind of the science nerd stuff as well. But he always kind of gives a report about what's going on with the sun, if there's sunspots, if there's CMEs, if there's solar flares, that kind of stuff. And he usually has a video every morning. Like I said, they're not very long. I'd say they're between 2 and 3 minutes, but they're a good thing to check in on, especially if there's a lot of solar activity going on. The Patriot Peasant. I was thinking about a freeze dryer. Yeah, if they wouldn't be so darn expensive, that'd almost be something where the neighborhood would have to get in and kick in on, because I don't know of anybody that have that much money laying around where they could just buy one of those. But I think it would be nice like I probably wouldn't make meals with it. I always like doing separate ingredients. The same thing for canning. That's why I don't do a like I know a lot of people will can soups and this kind of stuff, and I don't because I enjoy kind of the cooking. I always try to focus on ingredients. So, I'll can potatoes or I'll can tomatoes, make tomato juice, whatever, because then I have those ingredients here and then I can put those ingredients together in multiple different dishes. Once you got whatever, you got a jar of chicken noodle soup made, that's just chicken noodle soup. But if you have chicken broth, you can use that for different things and stuff. That's just how I look at it. I like having the ingredients more than the actual finished dishes, but that comes from, the cook in me. I'll watch the video. I dehydrated meats and veggies a lot. I dehydrate quite a few vegetables. The stuff that we dehydrate, onions, bell peppers and stuff. That stuff I use all the time. In fact, tonight I made Cajun rice and I actually threw in a quarter cup of my dried bell pepper along in with that. I had a fresh bell pepper, but then I supplemented it with some of the dry too. And then dried onions. Dried onions have a million different uses. You can throw them in stuff dry, like if you're cooking a soup or something like that, or you can reconstitute them, and you can add them into anything from meatloaf. You can reconstitute them, cook them in a little, saute them in a little butter or whatever, put them on a burger. There's just a million different things you can do with them. Oh yeah, silver. We were talking about silver because we got the grandbaby now. We were talking about getting maybe buying her like a silver eagle or something every year or whatnot. And the silver eagles have really gone up in price since the last time I bought any, because I haven't bought any silver eagles, I don't think, since maybe like 2015, something like that. Hey there, Michigan Silverback. How you doing? Dana Green. Space weather news now. Yeah, there's a couple different space weather news channels. Mr. MBB 333 is another one that talks about that stuff. Suspicious Observers is now space weather news. Thanks, Monkey Food Garden, for putting that on there. Oppenheimer Ranch Project. Is he still on YouTube? He used to be big on YouTube back in the day, but then I think I don't know if he got in trouble with them or YouTube was spanking him too bad and he got out of it, because I used to watch him way, way back in the day too. Yeah, there are Amish stores in Snover, Whittemore, Clare. I believe there are some in Cass City, and I also believe that there are some up in Marion. Marion is close to Cadillac. There are also some in southwestern Michigan, then of course Shipshewana in Indiana. That northern section of Indiana, there is a lot of Amish businesses there. And then in Ohio, Holmes County, Ohio, is known for its Amish and Pennsylvania Dutch communities as well. Henry Morgan, China is going to regulate silver outflow. Weren't they talking about putting together some kind of currency that was like gold backed or something, where it wasn't the BRICS nation, but it was something that was kind of spearheaded by China. I was just reading something on that here in the last few days. Hawkmeyer, how you doing? Mr. Bumble Hill, Jody from Michigan, Willow and aspirin. I'm allergic to aspirin, so that's something to watch for. Stuff like mullein is good for upper respiratory, and the thing with mullein is they put that shoot up on the second year where all the flowers on. Mullein flowers are actually, you can use any part of the leaf on the mullein, but the flowers are actually the most potent. And like I said, birch bark is used for, like bad joints, creaking joints, and that kind of stuff. That's another one. Dandelion was used a lot for like chapped hands, and I actually did a dandelion salve video. I want to say two seasons ago, something like that. But dandelion salve was one that was made a lot. And gosh, what are some of the other medicinals around here? Um, Northern prickly ash, that's actually a toothache remedy. And again, it's the bark, it's the inner bark of that they would chew if they had a toothache. And it actually has a numbing agent in it that's sort of like what Orgel is. And that was an extremely well known medicinal herb around here. Another one that when I was a kid, and I learned this from my father-in-law too, he had a little bit different variation on it. But if you were running a fever, they would cut slices of onion and they would put those slices of onion in socks and they would put them on the bottom of your feet to draw that fever out. And there's something inside the onion that almost acts like Tylenol. When that goes through your skin, that will lower your fever. And my father-in-law, before he passed away, he said that they would take onion and they would cook that onion down and um, they would wrap that in like a cotton cloth and they would put that on your chest to break up chest congestion. If you had like a bronchitis and you were trying to bring up the phlegm and that kind of stuff, they would put that pad with that boiled onion in it, and then the fumes from that would actually break that up, kind of like a Vicks almost. And that was another thing that was actually quite. I've seen different mentions of that in different books and writings and stuff as well. Yes, Mayo has a really good. That store in Mayo that has that's like a big hardware store, but boy, they had everything in there. I did a video in that store about maybe 3 years ago. We went up there in the spring, and it blew my mind how much stuff they had in there. They had just as much stuff as that big store in Clare, and those stores. They had generators and propane generators, and they sold propane there and stuff. They had a lot of really good stuff in there. Oppenheimer Ranch is still active on YouTube. That's good to know. I'll have to check that out once because, like I said, I used to watch him every once in a while. You can use a tea bag on a toothache. I was told chamomile tea bags work on sores and stuff too. If you kind of moisten them a little bit, you don't like soak them to lose all the properties, but if you soak them and you use them on different like cuts and that kind of stuff, abrasions, that will actually help heal that or will expedite healing on that too. Although I have never personally actually used that, but I have read that. Yeah, chicory's the other one. Chicory, chicory grows a lot around here, but the chicory roots can be roasted, ground up, and then you can use those for like a coffee substitute or stretch your coffee out. Uh, Potato on your eyes for welding burns. Boy, I've never. Oh, if you look at the arc, you burn your retina. Yeah, I guess that would make sense. Oh yeah, Vicks Vapor Rub and a hot toddy. Mom's hot toddy was was lemon. It was lemon, honey, um, tea, and Jim Beam. She would always use Jim Beam in it. And I asked her once if why and she just said that's just what you use. She didn't. I said, well, can't you use some other kind of whiskey or whatever? And she's like, no, you use Jim Beam. That's what we always use. That's what you use. So that's what the mom's hot toddy recipe was. But I remember that would break up a lot of phlegm and stuff too if you had that in your system. Uh, WBCQ shortwave free speech radio dog bite. You got a frequency number on that dog bite? Because I got shortwave radios, 3, 4 of them right, and I got my big one right here. I got it plugged in here. I got it plugged into an outside antenna, but that's my shortwave radio. Guys, I've got this since I got this when I was first out of high school, and it still works amazingly well. The regular antenna that was on it broke off though, so I got it wired up to be. I got it wired up for an outside antenna, and the outside antenna is basically a piece of bare copper wire that I got wrapped around the house, and it actually works really well. Oh yeah, never question mom, Henry. There was something that was like coleslaw. My mom made coleslaw with like the cider vinegar and a little bit of sugar and stuff like that, and she cut that up. And I'd ask, well, why don't you slice it with like the mandolin? Why do you cut it? And she's like, that's just the way you do it. You just don't. So that was pretty common too. Lots of current research on animal dewormer for cancer treatments. Yeah, Rip, that's isn't that like the ivermectin? That ivermectin, I know they bringing that out in that's been coming up a lot lately as cures for different things. WBCQ shortwave will be broadcast when nobody else does. Well, if I had a meter band, I could throw the scanner on that and scan through it and pick up the frequency number. But there used to be a lot of different frequencies on shortwave that we listened to. When we were younger, that you'd listen to BBC or you'd listen to Voice of America or whatever. There was a lot of different those, and you would pick up like the southern hemisphere you would pick up in the morning. So, like a broadcast from New Zealand, Australia, like Chile and stuff, that would come in, and that would always come in the morning. And then like North America and Europe, that you would get that more in the evening. Whole clove for tooth. Yep, oil of clove is something. I actually have oil of clove in the dental portion of my first aid kit. And actually, the one dentist, the one time when I had basically dry socket after a tooth extraction. That's basically what they put in it. And he said, well, we were going to put some medicine in your tooth, and then you were going to leave that there for a little bit. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, it's oil of clove on a little piece of cotton, and they had rolled that up, and they had a roll fine like tweezers that they packed that in there, and it did help. It helped quite a bit. And I remember Mom saying that too, that oil of clove, those little bottles, them little bottles that they would have at the grocery store or the drugstore back in the day, that would be like, oil of lemon, oil of clove, peppermint oil. They would have all them in there. And I actually did get some of those at a local pharmacy several years back there. But the northern prickly ash bark works good too for a toothache. I can definitely attest to that. Extended radio antennas use an old metal slinky thrown up in the trees. That's a good idea there, Rip. I never thought of that. Like I said, I got a couple of the plugs that plug in to the external jacks, and just uncoated copper wire. It doesn't even have to be very thick copper wire. You'll be surprised. It'll quadruple your range if you have that. And then too, with the different meter bands, so you have different wavelengths of the radio. And from what I was told back in the day is if you're listening to a specific meter band, you want to use that length of and length of wire for an antenna, or equal divisible parts of that. So if it's a 10-meter band, you want to use either a 10-meter antenna or a 5-meter antenna, something like that. That's what I was told back in the day. Dog Bite Broadcast, the Intelligent Report, hosted by Mark. We're on Liberty Tree Radio. I'll look that up. I'll have to look that up. Oh, there we go. 7410 megahertz. That is the 41-meter band. That is the 41-meter band. Thanks for putting that out there, Dog Bite. That way people can tune into that if they have a shortwave radio, and they can listen to that. And shortwave radios now, like if you go on Amazon, I probably don't have one laying around here just because I want to show you guys one. But I've actually purchased a couple really inexpensive shortwave radios that are like this big, that actually have like maybe 10 different meter bands on them for like $20, and they're worth every penny of it. Of course, everything's made in China like that anymore, but they actually come in quite handy. So I, of course, like I said, just because I want one here and show you one now, I don't have one because I got a couple of them in a Faraday bag packed away too. But yeah, those little shortwave radios are pretty nice to have, and a CB radio is nice to have too. And CB, the nice thing about a CB is you can pull any battery out of a car, and you can use that to power up a CB radio, and then you can throw an antenna up. I've got an antenna on my garage for that CB that sits on my workbench, and if we would ever need it here in the neighborhood, I just pop one of my batteries on the workbench there, take the alligator clip into it, and then us in the neighborhood here, we could talk. That works just as good as the as the Baofangs and stuff. Yeah, CB is making a comeback. I've seen a lot where people are starting to go back to CB radio, and if I ever get a new pickup truck, I'm thinking about having a CB or some type of bracket in there where I can keep like a Baofang and have a CB radio in there as well, just for kind of local communication here if something did happen. There are 0 GMRS radios made in the USA. It's pretty sad. Yeah, I believe that. Like I said, everyone that I got here, everyone's a Baofang, and like the newer ones are a little bit the last couple that I got, them last couple GMRS radios I got here, there's some kind of updated UV5R. They're actually pretty nice. They got a different backlit screen on them and stuff. And I actually thought they had a really good reception because me and my wife used them around here. We actually, I was at work one day and she went and seen mom and she was on her way back and I had her kind of tune up every mile and I started picking her up about 5 miles out. I thought that was pretty good because, I was standing around buildings and stuff. And by the time she hit like the 3 mile mark, it was perfectly clear. But I started picking her up at about 5 miles. And I thought that was much better than just the regular UV5R that I have. And I have probably about maybe a 2-foot antenna on those two radios. And I thought they were pretty decent. Yeah, everyone on here should get a GMRS license. I put in for a GMRS license. I paid $35 and I did it like on a Friday night or something. And like by Tuesday, I got my email that said, "This is your call sign. You're good for 10 years." So, then I just kind of put a GMRS radio in all of our vehicles and stuff and, wrote on the back, "This is what the call sign is." As long as you throw that call sign out when you're using it, they can't say anything. And the actual GMRS radios actually have the frequencies programmed into them. You could key up on you're not supposed to, but you could key up the individual frequencies too on a regular UV5R. At least the ones I got here, I can. But the actual GMRS radios will have them. They'll have them in there as GMRS 1, 2, 3, whatever. So. Prices, that's something I wanted to touch base too. Beef is kind of on the high side. Beef is right around $5 a pound for even like the ground chuck and stuff. Of course, if you buy more, you can get a little bit cheaper. Gas has been actually really reasonable. I got gas today. It was like 262. And then in town here, I don't know, it's always 10 or 15 cents more in a small town. So it was like 279 or something here in where we live. But the gas prices have come down quite a bit. I've also got a video that I'm going to put together here in the next couple of days on buddy heaters. I want to cover. I've had multiple people ask me about buddy heaters, and I'm going to say this right now, and I'll tell you this part of the video anyway. Buddy heaters aren't the best. But they're convenient and they're around everywhere. And there's a lot of quirks that I noticed with these buddy heaters over the years because I've been using them for a long time. I fixed them and scavenged parts off of old ones and stuff. And they're not the best, but because they're so prolific and they're all over the place, that's basically why I use them. And I've thought about actually putting in an actual propane heater, mount one on one of the walls and stuff, but that's almost then you're tied right to that spot. That's the other thing with the buddy heaters, you can kind of take them with you. So you got a little tank and you got a hose and you got a heater, you can take it to wherever you're working, especially like if you got a breakdown or something and you got to work outside in this cold and snowy weather, you can have a heater beside you to warm your hands and stuff up while you're working. And I like that portable aspect of it, even though the quality of those heaters is kind of, oh, what do you got here? Let's see here. What brand would I have always been a GM person. I've always had good luck with GM, so I would probably buy either a Chevrolet or a GMC. Now I know a lot of people like the Toyotas and stuff like that, and most of them are made in the United States or whatever. But where we are in this part of Michigan in particular, we got all the Chevrolet manufacturing places around here, the GM manufacturing places, and I would just probably stick with Chevrolet because I know Chevrolet. But would I buy? I think my next truck, I might buy more of like a work truck, something that's a little bit more heavy duty, so I will get a little bit more use out of them. The actual half-ton trucks anymore, they're all electronic and they're all they all got computer TV screens and everything on that. I don't really necessarily want that. We're like more of a work truck doesn't have all that stuff on it. It has a less electronics on it. I mean, everything's got electronics on it nowadays, but I would try to get something that has a decent size engine in it, a good transmission, and then less electronics. So then you're looking at more of like a larger work truck, even though, I'm not driving a long ways to work or anything anymore. And I don't really need for my own personal work, I don't need a massive, work truck, but I think that they would last longer. So that if I do get something, it's probably going to be something larger like that, is what I am thinking. So that's kind of my answer to that there, Sunset. Buy a prime rib and cut it up. Oh yeah, we've done that lots of times. We've gotten prime ribs really cheap, like after Christmas, and then when they were trying to get rid of them, they overbought for Christmas, and then they make actually really good steaks. Because if you don't know, prime rib is actually a ribeye steak. So if you cut in between them ribs and you cut them things up, that's basically what a ribeye steak is. But we've gotten different years. We've checked after the first of the year, and they got ribeyes that are or prime ribs that are hitting the end of the expiration date. It's a good time to buy all that stuff. Poultry's been pretty reasonable. I haven't seen any really high prices on chicken. Vegetables are still going good. You can still get, the potatoes, the onions, all that kind of main stuff here at our local vegetable and fruit markets and stuff. They've been still fairly reasonable, but beef has been the big one that's went up. Eggs have kind of come down in price. Eggs have been running about 250 a dozen, give or take. Of course, I always get, the local eggs. I got some. I bought a dozen eggs at one of the big box stores here this summer, and that was the first time I have ever had a rotten egg in a carton of eggs that I bought. And I cracked a couple of eggs into a bowl, and sure enough, they were rotten, and they still had a good expiration date on it. I can't explain why those eggs were rotten, but I learned my lesson. And I was in a hurry that day. I didn't want to make another stop, and I got them at a big box store, and that's what I got for it. So I would stay away from big box store eggs anymore, especially after that. Like I said, I really rubbed me the wrong way when that happened. Oh yeah, you can make one of the wall mount heaters. There's some of them that actually come with like legs, so you can either mount it on the wall or you can use it too. But then again, they're the ones I know of anyway. They're a lot larger, but where the buddy heaters are a little bit more portable. I wish they would actually make those buddy heaters a little bit more durable, because they're the right size, and they put out just enough heat for what I needed for. But they're kind of cheap. They're kind of junky. And that's why I always get them when I buy them. I try to get them at the like in April when they're trying to get rid of them for the season. Buy a newer used car, Sunset. For me, I have always purchased vehicles that were maybe a year or maybe two old, and they still had low enough miles on it that I still had some factory warranty. That way, I can drive the vehicle for maybe 8 months to a year, and I can watch it and I can see if there's any issues with it. There's things that I can have fixed then because it's still under warranty. And I've basically done that for my last three pickup trucks. I got it while I still had a little bit of warranty left on it, so I could, work the bugs out of it. And that has worked pretty good for me. I would probably do the same thing. So I would probably buy something that was used, but not terribly used. Yeah, and that's what I've been hearing, Harry Morgan, that pretty much anything nowadays, there's always some kind of issue on that stuff. And, they're ridiculously expensive. You're paying twice what you're paying for a vehicle now, for a pickup truck, especially. You're paying twice what you paid 10 years ago for that. And I think that's just absolutely crazy. I have no experience with a Nissan. That's something I've never owned. I mean, every one of my pickup trucks were either a Chevy or a GMC, going all the way back to when I had S10s. I had two S10s. My mom had a Ford F-150 that she had nothing but problems with. There was a recall on it. She had some stuff fixed. It got worse. That soured me on Ford right there. And I know some people have had good luck with Dodge trucks. I know a lot of the big farmers will drive the large Dodges with the Cummins in it, but I just don't have any experience with them. I've always just stuck with Chevrolet. Buy used 220 and down. You should still have to do research. Oh yeah, I don't know. You think that something that's $80,000 would be built to last, but it's just not. They're constantly pumping. And my truck is to the point mechanically it's sound, but it's rusting out everywhere. And literally, once it starts rusting like that, then you got problems with rust in the rust in the frame. Then you got structural issues, and it's getting to the point where I'm going to have to do something. But man, I am dreading it because I don't want a massive truck payment. I'm going to do everything I can to not have a truck payment. Kerosene around me is hard to find, and if you do find it, it is way higher than gas. The kerosene pump up at the gas station, I looked at that maybe 2 weeks ago, and I think it was around $5 a gallon. I want to say it was five. I want to say $4.99 or $5.49 or something like that. It was around $5 a gallon for it. So, but I don't think there's as many kerosene heaters around as there used to be. I think everybody's kind of switched to some type of propane heater because they're just more prevalent now than when I was a kid growing up. Kerosene heaters were definitely on the top for secondary heating, but it's not that much anymore. If you own a Ram with a 6.7 Cummins, look up grid intake bolt failure. It can destroy your engine. Banks Power has a solution. I will keep that in mind. Like our new work truck at work is, I think it's a 24, and it's a 3500 Chevrolet, and it's four-wheel drive and it's automatic, but it's basically a work truck. You got your radio screen on there with it's got your heating and stuff on it, but that's it. It's still got regular gauges, whatever, and you sit up quite a bit higher, so you got to have um, running boards to get into it. But I'm here to tell you that thing has got power. You can tow anything that you want. They put a snow plow on it at work. It's got a snow plow hookup on it. That's really kind of what I would like. I would like something like that. But the thing of it is it's nice having a crew cab. That one is just a single cab, but it's nice having a crew cab, if you got family and whatnot getting around. But then you're getting into a hell of a lot more money, especially on a 3500. But that 3500, that 1-ton pickup truck, that 1-ton Chevy has really impressed me with driving it. I enjoy driving that vehicle. So, maybe I can run across a used one like that that's not BTAC. Yeah, it's just, hell, you used to be able to buy a decent used pickup truck for, $30,000 now. I'm looking at stuff that's basically worn out for $30,000, and I'm not paying $30,000 for a worn out pickup truck. That just ain't happening. So that's my two videos that I plan on doing here in the next week or two is the smoked turkey video, and then the that buddy heater video. And I'm probably going to do a buddy heater because I have several other videos kind of on different aspects of the buddy heater, and I'm going to do a buddy heater playlist as well. So all of that information is kind of in one particular spot, and I'm going to try to cover everything in this next video here, so everybody's got that information handy. And I actually, like our house here, when we did some remodeling and stuff here, I actually ran natural gas pipe to a couple different corners of the house. We've thought about at some point doing a natural gas heater in here as well, just as a secondary backup, because up here it's nice to have multiple backups for heating. Hey, Deb Smith. I appreciate that, Henry. Like I said, I really need to get my crap together in 2026, and I need to get that book written because I've got everything from old lore and stories to recipes to different ways that the old timers did stuff. I really need to get that down in a form where people can have that on hand that's not related back to the internet, because basically right now everything that I have put out is all on the internet. Everything's online. It would be nice to have hard copies of that so people could use that stuff for reference. So I really need to get on the stick with that. Tom, working as a paramedic some years ago, late in the fall, to respond to carbon monoxide poisoning using kerosene heaters. Yeah, that the thing with kerosene heaters when I was growing up, mom would always, if she had the kerosene heater running, she would sometimes even crack a window to let air in. And then two, whenever the kerosene heater got filled, she would take that outside, she would fill it, restart it, whatever, open the door, let some air in and stuff when we would move those. And that was pretty much how she did it. We actually had a 55-gallon drum that we got that had a faucet on it, and I actually built out of 2x4s. I built a jig to hold that 55-gallon drum at an angle, so then we could take the one plug out, we could pump it full, and then we had the actual faucet on it where we could turn it to fill the small kerosene 5-gallon cans or whatever that we used up closer to the house. Yeah, Toyota. I know one guy here just recently, he waited like months, but he got a Toyota. I think what's the big one? Tundra. He got a Toyota, the regular half-ton size Toyota truck, but he literally waited almost a year to get that. I don't know what special stuff he got on it or whatever, but he waited a long, long time to get that. Yeah, like I said, I just wish those buddy heaters, they made them a little bit more durable, but they don't. They are kind of a throwout thing, and that's probably why I got 4 or 5 of them. One strictly for parts, but then I think I got one out in my deer blind still, and I got a couple here. I got one out in the garage. I do have detectors for kerosene, and now is actually a good time. I've seen different places that had carbon monoxide and smoke detectors on sale. That's something that's kind of big for Christmas gift giving stuff. So if you guys need one, it's probably a good time to go look for one of those. Hey, Scottish Prepper, good to see you. How's everything over across the pond? MR's Foxfire books. I don't know if I'll ever be as good as the Foxfire books, but I remember Mom reading me the ghost stories out of those Foxfire books. I think it was Foxfire number 5 that had all the ghost stories and the tales of like the panthers and the cougars up in the mountains and stuff. And they said that those panthers and cougars, when they would scream, it would almost sound like a person screaming, and it would make everybody's blood curdle when they would hear that at night and stuff. Those were the kind of stories that I got read when I was when I was like 6, 7 years old. Same shit, eh, Scottish Prepper? Yeah, nothing ever really changes. I heard that they were kind of fired up there in Ireland. Somebody made some kind of video there in Ireland against the immigration and stuff. They did the old school sitting there with masks and reading their little thing that they were talking about, and they were said that that the local Irish people were getting kind of screwed over by all the immigration, and that was just recently. My knee is slightly better. I think I'm kind of, hopefully I'm on the mend. I'll keep my fingers crossed there. Yeah, I don't imagine. I can see the stuff here that's going sideways with that, and I can only imagine you guys over there in Europe have really gotten pounded with that stuff. And well, even the Scandinavian countries. I actually have a friend in Sweden that I talk to from time to time, and he says the exact same thing. He said that there's places in Stockholm where you just don't go. You just don't go because the people that have moved in there have basically taken it over. Even the police don't go to those particular neighborhoods and areas. You just don't go there, and that's pretty bad. That they've literally taken over a large European city like that, where the law enforcement won't even go there. That's just crazy. Well, Well, guys, I have been on here for about an hour already. I don't want to take up your whole evening. I want to say a special thanks there to Rep to jumping in there. Hopefully, he answered. So I didn't catch all the stuff you guys were talking about, but hopefully, he was able to answer a few of the questions there for you guys. Hey, I appreciate all you guys stopping in here and always spending a little time with me here on these live streams. I always think it's a good exchange of information and ideas we can get together and I can let you guys know what's going on here in Michigan. Hey, Coney, how you doing? Oh, I like doing the live streams. It's just nice to discuss whatever kind of comes up, whatever's off the top of my head. And like I said, I'm going to try to start doing maybe a live stream every couple of weeks or something, talking about some of the old tools and that kind of stuff, and then show you guys what all that stuff looks like, so you guys can maybe utilize some of that stuff too. We're on the eastern part of the country here, so we don't have the same antiques that the western part of the country has, but all of that stuff is fairly useful. But I appreciate you guys stopping by here and spending some time with me. I hope you guys always get some information and some entertainment out of my videos. A special thanks to Monkey Food Garden and Mother Refugee, of course, for always moderating for me. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to help me out there. But anyway, you guys have a good one.